The morning air felt heavy with formality as people slowly filled the large hall inside the military base. Rows of chairs were set in perfect lines. Flags stood tall near the stage, their colors sharp under bright lights. The room smelled faintly of polish and fresh uniforms. Families whispered to each other. Officers adjusted their jackets, checked their medals, and straightened their posture. This ceremony was important. Promotions were not handed out easily here. Every rank was earned through years of discipline, sacrifice, and quiet endurance. Among the crowd stood a woman in a neatly pressed uniform. She was not speaking to anyone. She did not look nervous or excited. Her face was calm, almost unreadable. She stood near the side aisle, hands folded behind her back, eyes focused forward. To most people, she looked ordinary. No extra ribbons, no visible decorations that drew attention. If anyone glanced at her, they would assume she was junior or simply assisting with the event. She had arrived early, earlier than most. She always did. Being early was a habit built from years of training. She checked her position twice, making sure she was standing exactly where the instructions had told her to be. Once satisfied, she stayed still. She had learned long ago that attention was not always helpful. Sometimes it was better to blend in and observe. As the hall continued to fill, conversations grew louder. Laughter echoed from one corner. In another, an older officer shared stories with a group of younger ones, his voice confident and proud. Cameras were being tested. A few people glanced at the stage, where senior commanders would soon appear. The energy in the room slowly shifted from casual to serious. The woman noticed how people looked at her, even if only briefly. Some gave her quick glances, then looked away. A few frowned slightly, as if confused about why she was standing there. One junior officer whispered something to another, and both glanced in her direction. She did not react. She had been underestimated many times before. It was nothing new. She thought briefly about the long road that had brought her here. The years of early mornings, late nights, and moments where quitting felt easier than continuing. The mission she could never talk about. The weight of responsibility that came with decisions made in silence. None of that showed on her uniform. None of it showed on her face. The sound of boots striking the floor echoed sharply as a group of officers entered the hall together. Their presence changed the mood instantly. Conversations dropped to low murmurs. People stood straighter. The woman did not turn her head, but she sensed a shift. Authority had entered the room. One officer, in particular, moved with loud confidence. His uniform was decorated, his posture rigid. He carried himself as if the space belonged to him. As he walked, his eyes scanned the hall, taking in every detail. He was known for his strictness and short temper. Many officers respected him, but many feared him too. As he moved closer to the aisle, his eyes landed on the woman. His step slowed. His expression tightened. To him, she looked out of place. A junior officer standing where senior officers would soon line up was unacceptable in his mind. He stopped just a few feet away from her. The noise in the hall seemed to fade, though conversation still continued elsewhere. He cleared his throat loudly, drawing attention. "Hey," he said sharply. "You. Move." The woman turned her head calmly and faced him. Her expression remained steady. There was no fear in her eyes, no challenge either. "I'm assigned to stand here," she replied evenly. The officer's jaw tightened. He was not used to being questioned, especially by someone he believed was far below his rank. He took a step closer, invading her space. "You're blocking the aisle," he said. "This area is not for juniors. Step aside." Her voice stayed calm. "Sir, I was instructed to remain here until the ceremony begins." A few nearby officers noticed the exchange. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others pretended not to see. No one wanted to get involved. Rank mattered, and crossing the wrong person could end a career. The officer let out a short, annoyed breath. His face flushed slightly. He glanced at her uniform again, clearly unimpressed by what he saw. "Do you know who you're talking to?" he asked. "Yes, sir," she said. Her tone was respectful, not defensive. His irritation grew. In his mind, this was a simple situation. She should have moved immediately. The fact that she hadn't felt like open defiance. People nearby began to watch more closely now. A quiet tension settled around them. The woman could feel the eyes on her, but she did not let it show. Her hands remained behind her back. Her shoulders stayed relaxed. She had learned control in moments far more dangerous than this. This was just noise, just ego. She had faced worse under far higher stakes. The officer raised his voice slightly. "I don't have time for this. Move now." "I cannot, sir," she said simply. That was the moment when his anger crossed a line. His hand lifted, not fully raised yet, but enough for those nearby to see. A sharp intake of breath moved through the small crowd around them. Someone whispered, "Oh no." The woman did not flinch. She did not step back. She did not raise her hands. She only looked at him, calm and steady, as if waiting for a storm to pass. In that frozen moment, the entire hall seemed to slow. The ceremony had not yet begun, but something else was unfolding, something that would change how everyone in that room saw her. From the far end of the hall, a voice cut through the tension. It was firm, controlled, impossible to ignore. "That's enough." The officer's raised hand stopped midair. The woman did not turn yet, but she knew who that voice belonged to. The commanding officer had arrived. The room fell into complete silence. The commanding officer moved quickly toward the pair, his steps echoing loudly in the now silent hall. Every officer and guest turned to see who had interrupted the confrontation. The aggressive officer froze, suddenly aware that he had crossed a line in front of everyone. His hand, which had been lifted, hovered uncomfortably in the air. He looked around, hoping someone would intervene, but no one moved. All eyes were on him. The woman remained calm, standing perfectly still. Her posture was firm, her hands still clasped behind her back. She did not speak, but her presence carried a quiet confidence that filled the space between them. There was no fear, only control. It was a control born from years of experience in situations far more dangerous than this, situations where one wrong move could cost lives. The commanding officer reached them and stopped a few feet away. His gaze shifted from the aggressive officer to the woman, taking in every detail. His voice was calm but firm, and when he spoke, it carried authority that could not be ignored. "Do you realize who you are addressing?" he asked, his eyes locked on the aggressive officer. The officer swallowed hard, his mouth open as if to answer, but no words came. He realized too late that he had made a grave mistake. The commanding officer's presence alone changed the dynamics of the room. Everyone could feel it. Tension thickened, and the atmosphere shifted from irritation to anticipation. The woman's eyes remained on the aggressive officer, but she barely reacted to the commanding officer. She knew him, but she did not need his intervention. She had handled far more dangerous situations on her own. This was a test of patience, of composure, and she passed it silently. The commanding officer took a step closer. His tone was steady, deliberate, and it carried a weight that made even the aggressive officer reconsider his actions. "Explain why this officer is in the wrong place," he said calmly. The aggressive officer stammered, trying to form words that would justify his behavior. "Yes, sir. I thought she was in the wrong position. I didn't know she was supposed to be here." "Do you see her uniform?" the commanding officer asked, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "Do you see her placement? She is exactly where she is supposed to be. She has been assigned to this position for this ceremony. Your assumption is yours alone. You made a mistake." The aggressive officer's face went pale. He had assumed, and assumptions in this environment were dangerous. The commanding officer's words made that clear, and the woman's calm demeanor reinforced the point. Her quiet strength now seemed unshakable. She did not need to say a word to command respect. It was evident in her presence. Whispers spread through the room. Officers nudged each other and glanced at the woman with newfound interest. Some were surprised. Others were impressed. The woman's calm in the face of potential violence was unusual, and it made an impression on everyone watching. They began to realize that appearances could be deceiving. The aggressive officer's voice trembled as he tried to regain some sense of authority. "Yes, sir. I didn't mean to disrespect her." The commanding officer raised a hand, signaling him to stop. Disrespect occurs the moment you act without knowing the facts. You assumed. That is your error, and you will be held accountable for it. The room was silent. No one dared to speak. The commanding officer's words carried the weight of discipline and authority. He did not shout. He did not raise his voice. He simply stated the truth, and it was enough. The woman's calm remained unbroken. She did not need to intervene to defend herself. She had already proven her composure and her position. The commanding officer's presence had validated what she had known all along. She belonged here. She was in the right place at the right time, and no one's assumptions could change that. The aggressive officer took a small step back, his confidence shattered. He realized that he had underestimated someone far more capable than he had imagined. The commanding officer's eyes remained on him, steady and unyielding. He understood now that rank and authority were not always visible, and assumptions could be dangerous. The woman remained still, but her mind was alert. She noticed the reactions of those around her, the subtle shifts in posture, the quiet exchanges of glances, the awareness that respect was being recalculated in real time. She had been here before, in situations where perception mattered as much as reality, and she understood the dynamics perfectly. The commanding officer turned his attention back to the woman. He nodded slightly, acknowledging her presence, her composure, and her readiness. There was no need for words. The recognition was silent, but clear. She had handled the situation with the calm authority expected of someone of her rank and experience. The aggressive officer finally lowered his hand completely. He stood frozen, unsure what to do next. The commanding officer's presence was a reminder that actions had consequences, and he had acted hastily, without understanding the situation fully. He had learned in a moment that appearances could be deceiving and that true authority often went unnoticed until tested. The woman's expression remained calm. She had already moved past the confrontation mentally, focusing on the ceremony ahead. She understood that patience, composure, and silent strength often spoke louder than words or displays of power. Her readiness and calm had diffused a potentially dangerous situation without escalating it further. The room slowly returned to a sense of order. Officers adjusted their positions. Families returned to their conversations. And the sounds of the ceremony preparing to start began to fill the space once more. The aggressive officer remained silent, his earlier confidence replaced by caution and reflection. The woman, still standing perfectly still, took a deep breath. She had faced challenges far greater than this, and she knew that composure was one of the greatest tools in her arsenal. Her calm had commanded respect. Her patience had diffused tension, and her quiet strength had made it clear that she was not to be underestimated. As the commanding officer moved away, signaling the resumption of the ceremony, the woman adjusted her stance slightly, ready to continue. She knew that the true test was not over. The ceremony, the promotions, and the recognition of her abilities were all still ahead. But for now, she had proven, silently and powerfully, that assumptions and aggression would not define her place. Her presence alone had made a statement that no words could diminish. Around her, the audience slowly began to settle. The incident had left an impression, not just on the aggressive officer, but on everyone present. Respect had shifted subtly in the room, quietly, almost imperceptibly but unmistakably. The woman had become a silent symbol of composure, strength, and authority. She did not seek attention, nor did she demand it. Her focus remained on the ceremony, on the tasks at hand, and on the responsibilities that had brought her here. Yet, in standing firm, she had reminded everyone that true authority was not always visible, and that respect must be earned, recognized, and maintained through presence, action, and integrity. The ceremony's preparations continued, but the atmosphere had changed. There was a quiet understanding among the attendees. Some had underestimated her. Others had doubted her. But now, all had witnessed her poise under pressure. It was a subtle lesson in discipline, in the power of calm, and in the unspoken strength that often goes unnoticed until it is tested. The woman took a moment to steady herself, inhaling deeply, centering her thoughts, and preparing for the next steps. She knew that composure, clarity, and quiet strength were her greatest allies. The incident was over, but its impact remained. It had been a test, and she had passed it, without raising her voice, without resorting to anger, and without losing control. The aggressive officer, now silent and reflective, had learned a lesson that could not be undone. The room had learned a lesson in humility and awareness, and the woman, standing calmly in her assigned place, had demonstrated that true authority is shown not by words or threats, but by presence, patience, and quiet confidence. The ceremony would continue, but the mark of that moment would linger long after the hall emptied, a testament to the power of calm under pressure and the quiet authority of someone who had earned her place through experience and discipline. After the tension had eased slightly, the hall slowly returned to its earlier rhythm, but the air remained charged. The commanding officer returned to front, signaling that the ceremony was about to resume. Everyone took their seats. Families adjusted themselves, and the officers realigned in their designated positions. Yet, the incident between the aggressive officer and the woman had left a subtle but undeniable mark. Eyes lingered on her now, filled with curiosity and a newfound respect that had not existed before. The woman remained standing where she was assigned, her posture perfect, her hands folded behind her back. Despite the attention she was drawing, she did not move unnecessarily. She had learned that dignity and calm could convey more authority than words ever could. She observed the room quietly, taking in the faces of those around her, the subtle gestures of officers and the whispers of family members trying to guess what had just occurred. She noticed the aggressive officer, who had returned his place but kept stealing glances at her. His face was pale, and his earlier confidence had vanished. He shifted uncomfortably, adjusting his uniform as though it could protect him from the embarrassment he now felt. She did not pay him any attention, but she could sense his discomfort. It was satisfying in a quiet way, not because she wanted revenge, but because the truth had been revealed and it had spoken louder than any confrontation ever could. The commanding officer, noticing the lingering tension, raised his voice to bring the audience back to focus. He began speaking about the importance of discipline, respect, and the significance of the promotion ceremony. His words were measured and deliberate, carrying the weight of years of experience. Every officer listened intently, understanding that what he said reflected the standards they were expected to uphold. As the speech continued, he made a subtle gesture toward the woman. She did not react immediately, but a few officers closest to her noticed the acknowledgement. It was silent but powerful, a recognition that she had handled the earlier situation with a calm, composed authority that had long been expected of someone in her position. No applause or verbal acknowledgement was necessary. Her composure spoke for itself. The aggressive officer could not hide his growing realization. He had assumed that he could intimidate anyone who appeared junior, but he had been proven wrong. He understood now that assumptions based on appearance were dangerous. The woman had faced his aggression without fear or hesitation, and that quiet strength had shifted the room's perception in an instant. Even those who did not know her closely could see the authority she carried, the confidence that came not from a title alone, but from years of experience, discipline, and quiet determination. The woman's mind was calm, but alert. She understood that the ceremony was not just about recognition, but also about observation. Everyone in the room was watching, not just her, but each other. Officers evaluated their peers. Families noticed decorum, and she absorbed it all without distraction. She had learned long ago that perception could be as important as performance, and she used that knowledge to maintain her composure. The commanding officer continued, guiding the ceremony forward. He spoke about the responsibilities that come with promotion, the importance of accountability, and the need for composure under pressure. His words seemed to resonate with everyone in the room, but the aggressive officer felt them personally. He realized that his earlier actions had been inappropriate and that his lack of awareness could have had serious consequences. The woman remained still, a pillar of quiet confidence. She noticed how subtle gestures and glances shifted around her. Officers began to adjust their behavior, speaking with more respect and attention. Families watched, some whispering to each other about the incident they had just witnessed. It was clear that the woman had made an impression, not with words, but with her presence and unwavering calm. The commanding officer paused, then addressed the aggressive officer directly. His words were firm but not harsh. Actions speak louder than assumptions. What you assumed was your mistake. Learn from it. The officer lowered his gaze, understanding the gravity of the statement. It was a public reminder, a lesson in humility and awareness that he would not forget. The woman's expression did not change. She had no need for recognition or applause. Her focus was on the ceremony and the responsibilities that came with her promotion. Yet, She could sense the silent acknowledgement from those around her. Respect had shifted quietly, subtly, but unmistakably. It was a reminder that authority was not always visible, and respect was something earned, not demanded. As the ceremony continued, the audience and officers settled into their roles. Families watched proudly as names were called. Promotions were acknowledged, and the significance of each step was explained. The woman remained in her assigned position, calm and composed, observing everything with a clear mind and steady focus. She understood that her role was not only to be recognized, but also to set an example of how to conduct oneself with dignity and control. The aggressive officer, now fully aware of his earlier mistake, adjusted his behavior. He spoke softly to a colleague nearby, avoiding any further confrontation. The commanding officer's earlier words lingered in the room, a quiet lesson in accountability and the importance of composure. It was clear to everyone that the woman had handled the incident with a level of maturity and professionalism that exceeded expectations. Whispers circulated quietly among some of the attendees. They discussed her composure, her calm under pressure, and the subtle strength she displayed. It became clear that she had gained respect not just from the commanding officer, but from everyone present. Her presence alone communicated authority and confidence, something that could not be faked or forced. The ceremony proceeded without further incident, but the room's atmosphere had shifted. There was an underlying acknowledgement of the woman's strength and composure. Officers moved with more awareness. Families watched more attentively, and the aggressive officer remained cautious. It was a lesson in humility, respect, and the power of silent authority. Throughout the ceremony, the woman remained a figure of calm observation. She understood that every moment, every glance, every action could carry meaning. She had been underestimated, challenged, and yet had remained unwavering. Her ability to handle pressure quietly, without confrontation or display, spoke volumes about her character and her preparedness for the responsibilities she was about to assume. As the final moments of the ceremony approached, the commanding officer prepared to announce the completion of the promotion acknowledgments. He looked toward the woman once more, giving a subtle nod of acknowledgment. It was brief, but it carried the weight of recognition. She had demonstrated what it meant to lead with calm authority, to face challenges without fear, and to maintain dignity in the most tense situations. The woman took a quiet, steadying breath. She had passed the initial test of the day: public scrutiny, unexpected confrontation, and observation by her peers and superiors. She had proven herself through calm action and measured presence. The lessons of the ceremony were clear. Authority is not always loud. Respect must be earned, and composure can command more attention than words or gestures ever could. Around her, the audience and officers continued with the ceremony, unaware of how much the woman's silent strength had influenced the room. Families smiled proudly, officers nodded in understanding, and even the aggressive officer remained thoughtful and subdued. The woman's presence had changed the dynamics of the hall, leaving a lasting impression without a single shout, threat, or dramatic gesture. She remained alert, ready for the next phase of the ceremony. She knew that her promotion was more than a title. It was a responsibility, a duty, and an acknowledgement of years of disciplined service. The respect she had earned silently would continue to follow her, influencing how others interacted with her and how she conducted herself in every future mission and challenge. The hall's atmosphere, once tense and uncertain, now carried a sense of order and quiet respect. The woman had become a central figure in the ceremony, not through words or flamboyance, but through her unwavering composure, careful observation, and the quiet strength that only experience can cultivate. Her actions had spoken louder than any announcement could, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. As the ceremony moved towards conclusion, the woman remained in place, calm and dignified, aware of the significance of her actions. She had proven that true authority comes not from aggression, assumption, or appearance, but from the ability to remain composed under pressure, to act with integrity, and command respect silently through presence and action. The lessons of this day would stay with the audience long after the ceremony ended, a quiet testament to the power of calm and the impact of understated strength. The ceremony reached a turning point when the commanding officer called the attention of the entire hall to the center stage. The room fell silent again, but this time it was not the tense, fearful silence from before. It was a silence of anticipation. Everyone sensed that something significant was about to happen, and eyes naturally drifted toward the woman who had become the quiet focus of attention throughout the morning. The commanding officer's voice was steady and commanding. "There is a matter of importance that must be clarified before we continue." He paused, letting the words settle over the audience. "It concerns the officer standing at the side." Whispers spread quickly. Officers shifted in their positions, some leaning forward slightly, curious. Families exchanged puzzled looks. The woman, standing still with her hands behind her back, did not move. Her expression remained calm, unreadable, but her eyes showed a hint of anticipation. She had expected this moment, though she had not sought it. The commanding officer continued, speaking slowly and deliberately so that every word carried weight. "This officer holds a temporary operational rank for today that places her above several senior officers present in this hall." Gasps filled the room. People blinked in surprise, trying to process the information. The aggressive officer's jaw dropped slightly. His earlier assumptions and confidence seemed laughable now. He looked at her again, seeing her not as a junior or someone to intimidate, but as someone who outranked him and others present in the room. Shock, disbelief, and a growing sense of humility washed over him. The commanding officer turned slightly toward her and gave a small nod of acknowledgement. The silent recognition was enough to validate everything the woman had done up to this point. Her calm under pressure, her steady composure, and her refusal to react aggressively were all proof of her capability and authority. The nod carried respect that no words could enhance. Some officers exchanged looks, murmuring quietly to each other. The quiet strength she had shown earlier now made perfect sense. They began to realize that her calm demeanor was not indifference, but confidence. It was experience, training, and preparation all embodied in one presence. She had been underestimated because she did not demand attention. Now, the truth was undeniable. The aggressive officer tried to speak, to apologize or explain himself, but he found that words failed him. He had acted rashly, and the consequences were visible to everyone. The commanding officer's explanation was enough to reset the hierarchy, reminding everyone that authority and rank could sometimes be invisible until revealed. It was a lesson that would not be forgotten. The woman's eyes moved briefly across the room, taking in the reactions. She noticed some younger officers glancing at her with admiration, and a few of the older ones with newfound respect. Families whispered in surprise, impressed by her poise. The commanding officer's presence, combined with her calm demeanor, had shifted the entire room's perception. She had become the embodiment of silent authority. The commanding officer continued to speak, emphasizing the responsibilities that came with her operational rank. While today she may not hold this rank permanently, the authority and judgment she has demonstrated are undeniable. Her actions today exemplify what it means to lead with discipline, calm, and integrity. The audience listened intently. The words were not merely a formal acknowledgement, but a clear demonstration of trust and recognition. They conveyed that the woman had earned her place not by loud displays or confrontation, but through her readiness, experience, and ability to remain composed when challenged. The aggressive officer's face reflected his growing understanding. He had acted hastily, based solely on appearance, and he had been proven wrong. His confidence was replaced with humility and reflection. The realization hit him that respect could not be assumed, and authority could not be challenged without knowledge. The lessons of this moment would stay with him for a long time. The woman herself remained composed. She had never sought to draw attention, and now that it was on her, she handled it with quiet dignity. She understood that her role was not to showcase power, but to demonstrate capability through action and composure. Her calm had transformed a potentially humiliating confrontation into a moment of validation and recognition. Around the room, officers and families absorbed the revelation. The hierarchy of the ceremony had shifted quietly but unmistakably. Eyes that had doubted or overlooked her now acknowledged her authority. Her presence alone had changed the dynamics of the hall. Respect was being recalculated in real time, based not on assumptions or appearances, but on the reality of her rank and her ability to handle the situation with poise. The commanding officer's voice carried over the whispers, bringing the focus back to the ceremony. Let this serve as a reminder that judgment must always be grounded in knowledge and awareness. Assumptions can be dangerous, and respect must be based on understanding, not perception alone. The audience absorbed the lesson. The aggressive officer shifted uncomfortably, his earlier arrogance replaced by thoughtful silence. Younger officers nodded, mentally noting the example she had set. Families looked on, impressed by the professionalism and quiet strength demonstrated before them. It was a defining moment, one that would be remembered by everyone present. The woman's mind remained focused on the ceremony, aware that the revelation was only one part of the day. She had proven her authority, yes, but she knew the responsibilities that came with it. Leadership was not about proving oneself in a single moment. It was about consistent action, judgment, and integrity. Today had tested her composure and her presence, and she had passed without compromise. The commanding officer stepped back slightly, allowing the room to absorb the revelation fully. Silence settled over the audience again, heavier now with understanding. Respect was no longer in question. The woman had demonstrated that true authority could exist without boastfulness or aggression, that calm under pressure was a mark of leadership, and that dignity could command more attention than any title or decoration. As the ceremony prepared to continue, she remained in her assigned position. The aggressive officer had learned an important lesson about humility, respect, and the dangers of assumption. Other officers now observed her with a mix of curiosity and admiration, realizing that composure and competence often speak louder than any outward display of rank. Families whispered quietly, impressed by her calm and the commanding officer's acknowledgement. The lesson of the day was clear. Authority is earned, respect is not given freely, and true strength is often silent. The woman's presence, calm and unwavering, had taught all of them an invaluable lesson without a single raised voice or confrontational act. The hall slowly returned to procedural rhythm of the ceremony, but the energy had shifted. The revelation had left a lasting impact. The woman's quiet authority had changed perceptions, recalibrated respect, and left an impression that would linger long after the ceremony ended. Every officer, young and old, had witnessed something extraordinary in how she carried herself, proving that leadership was as much about presence and composure as it was about rank. As the ceremony moved forward, she remained poised, understanding that today's recognition was not an endpoint, but part of a larger journey. She had demonstrated the value of calm in the face of challenge, the power of silent strength, and the importance of measured action. The aggressive officer had learned humility, the audience had learned respect, and she had shown without question that true authority often goes unnoticed until it is revealed by action, not assumption. The final part of the ceremony began with a sense of calm authority, a rhythm that now carried the weight of understanding throughout the hall. The commanding officer stepped to the front, looking across the room. Families, officers, and attendees were attentive, having witnessed the earlier confrontation and its resolution. The air was thick with respect and anticipation, but it was no longer tense. The woman remained standing in her assigned place, poised and dignified, a steady presence in a room that had learned the meaning of quiet authority. The commanding officer addressed the hall. Today we have witnessed a demonstration of integrity, composure, and discipline that deserves recognition. His gaze shifted subtly toward the woman, acknowledging her without disrupting the ceremony's flow. The actions of our officers reflect their readiness not only to lead, but to serve with responsibility and respect. The woman felt a quiet satisfaction, not from attention, but from a knowledge that her presence and conduct had spoken louder than any announcement could. She had faced a moment of challenge with composure, and the lesson had been seen and understood by all present. She knew that leadership was about actions, judgment, and silent strength, and today she had demonstrated all three. The aggressive officer, who had earlier acted rashly, now stood quietly among his peers. His posture was different, no longer proud, but thoughtful. He had learned a powerful lesson. Respect was not given automatically, and assumptions based on appearances could lead to misjudgment and embarrassment. He had faced the consequences of his assumptions in front of everyone, and it was a humbling experience. He looked at the woman again, this time with a measured respect that had been absent earlier. The commanding officer continued to guide the ceremony, calling forward officers who were due for promotion. Each name was met with applause, a mix of pride and celebration. The atmosphere had transformed into one of honor and recognition, yet the undercurrent of respect for the woman's earlier composure remained. Every attendee understood that her quiet strength had set a tone for the ceremony that would linger far longer than the speeches or applause. When it was finally her turn, the woman stepped forward gracefully. She moved without haste, her posture perfect, her eyes calm. As she approached the stage, whispers spread throughout the room. Families and officers alike leaned forward slightly, sensing that this moment was significant, not because of the ceremony alone, but because of the story that had unfolded earlier. The commanding officer presented her with the official documents, an insignia representing her promotion. This recognition is a testament not only to your skills and experience, but also to your discipline, composure, and leadership under pressure, he said. His words were deliberate, filled with respect and sincerity. She accepted the documents with quiet dignity. There was no flourish, no dramatic gesture. Her calm presence conveyed the weight of her achievement more effectively than any words could. As she returned to her place, applause filled the room, not just for promotion, but for the strength, patience, and integrity she had demonstrated throughout the entire morning. The aggressive officer watched carefully. He had learned humility, and the lesson was clear. Leadership and authority were not about intimidation or appearances. They were about action, judgment, and composure. He silently acknowledged the woman's achievements, understanding that she had earned respect through her conduct, not confrontation. The ceremony moved towards conclusion. The commanding officer addressed the audience one final time. Let today serve as a reminder that respect is earned, integrity is demonstrated, and leadership is shown not through loud words or displays of power, but through action, composure, and the quiet strength that guides others. The woman remained standing tall, her hand behind her back, eyes calm and clear. She understood that the true significance of the day was not in the applause or the recognition, but in the subtle lesson imparted to everyone present. Authority is seen in behavior, respect is earned through composure, and leadership is demonstrated in quiet moments as much as in grand gestures. Officers and families began to leave their seats, conversations shifting from whispers of curiosity to discussions of admiration and reflection. Some officers were inspired, taking mental notes about the example she had set. Families spoke softly among themselves, impressed by her calm and professional demeanor. Even those who had doubted or overlooked her now acknowledged her presence, if only quietly and respectfully. The aggressive officer, still among his peers, quietly adjusted his uniform, no longer concerned with appearances but with reflection. The lesson of the day was not forgotten, and it would influence how he interacted with others, how he observed, and how he approached authority in the future. The woman's conduct had left a lasting impression that no words of apology or explanation could have matched. The ceremony concluded with a final salute from the commanding officer. Congratulations to all our officers today. Remember the lessons of this morning. Composure, integrity, and respect are the foundations of leadership. The audience responded with applause. But it was different now, measured, thoughtful, and filled with a quiet appreciation for the depth of what had occurred. The woman returned to her seat, maintaining her posture and composure. Her focus remained on the responsibilities that lay ahead. She understood that recognition was only part of the journey. The greater challenge was living up to the expectations her rank demanded, setting examples for others, and maintaining the same level of discipline and calm she had demonstrated earlier. As the hall began to empty, conversations continued quietly among officers and families. Many spoke of her calm under pressure, of the lesson learned by the aggressive officer, and of the subtle authority she had displayed without a single act of aggression. It was clear that her presence had left a lasting impact, one that would be remembered long after the ceremony concluded. The woman, aware of the attention she had drawn, remained composed. She had faced challenge, confrontation, and observation with grace and discipline. The lesson for the audience, for the aggressive officer, and for herself was clear. True authority is demonstrated through composure, action, and a quiet confidence that comes from experience and integrity. As she walked toward the exit with the other officers, she received nods of respect from those who had once doubted her. Some offered quiet congratulations. She acknowledged them with the same calm demeanor that had guided her throughout the morning. There was no need for fanfare. Recognition had been given. Respect had been earned, and the lesson of quiet strength had been made clear to all. The aggressive officer followed the procession of officers, thoughtful and introspective. He had witnessed the true meaning of leadership and authority. The morning's events had changed his perspective, and he understood now that composure, readiness, and respect could not be assumed or faked. He had been humbled, and he knew it. The woman walked with dignity, her mind focused not on the applause or the recognition, but on the work ahead, the responsibilities of her new rank, and the example she must continue to set. The ceremony had concluded, but its lessons would carry forward into the actions, decisions, and respect she commanded in the future. By the time the hall emptied, a quiet order had settled over the space. Families and officers departed, leaving behind a sense of reflection, admiration, and respect. The woman's composure, the commanding officer's acknowledgement, and the lesson imparted to the aggressive officer had created a moment that would be remembered by all who witnessed it. Her journey of discipline, composure, and leadership had been recognized, and she had shown that true authority is not about intimidation or appearances, but about silent strength, integrity, and the ability to act with patience and clarity under pressure. The final lesson of the day was clear. Respect is earned, authority is demonstrated, and leadership is shown not by words or gestures alone, but through presence, action, and quiet confidence.